So one of the things that when we go through life is that we may often feel very lonely. Loneliness is one of the biggest problems in the world today. UK was the first country in the world which appointed a official governmental post, the Minister for Loneliness. And the first Minister of Loneliness resigned because of loneliness. So unfortunately, the world is very lonely. And it's not just like relational loneliness that, okay, I don't have close friends, I don't have someone with whom I can share my heart. That is there. But beyond relational loneliness, we all may go through phases in our life where the people who are close with us are not available or somehow we have had some relationship issues. But beyond that, there is existential loneliness. Where you may wonder, is it I am all alone in this big bad world, trying to survive, trying to succeed, and it seems the whole world is against me. And unfortunately, many people think that whether I believe in God or not, that's just a personal choice. It's almost like for many people, like, okay, do you like chocolates or do you like what other sweet is there? Do you like chocolates or do you like cakes? For many people, it's the choice whether I believe in God or not. It's that casual a choice. Okay, yeah, I believe, I don't believe. But actually that choice has great implications. And the implication is that the choice whether I believe in God, that is not a casual choice. Whether you like a strawberry cake or some other cake. It's not like that. It is a very consequential choice. And why is it a consequential choice? Because whether we believe in God or not, that shapes our very vision of life. Who I am and what am I doing over here. Now, how is it? Without God, what happens is, our story of life is, okay, I am alone in this world fighting against this big bad world. But with God, we understand that there is a bigger reality and I am a part of that bigger reality. So now sometimes in history, God himself descends to this world. And Krishna was right there with Arjuna. So that Krishna Arjuna, it is both literal, that it's historical. That means it happened at a particular time. Krishna was on a chariot with Arjuna. But it's also a universal reality. That our body is like a chariot and we as souls are in this chariot and Krishna is with us in the chariot of the body. So that bigger vision that I am not alone in this world, that is a very important psychological implication of the philosophical conception of God. So this reality that our life is a part of a bigger story is often illustrated in the lives of great saints. And that is what will be illustrated in the life of Bhaktivinoda Thakura, which we will discuss. But this is a broader context I will be taking. Who would like to read the next paragraph? Yes, please.
Please, O Lord, let this beatific vision of the human divine partnership become the enduring image that resides and presides in my memory. Let this be the centerpiece of the story I tell myself internally as my life story unfolds externally with its inevitable ups and downs.
Very nice. Thank you. Very clearly read. So, our life, what the Gita tells us is, it's a human divine partnership. It is, the Gita has a very fascinating vision of God. See, most traditions talk about God as the protector. And that is definitely important. God is the protector. But when that is the vision, God is the protector, the implication is like say, if there is some danger, there's the police and we are the citizens. So, or there is the military and we are the general citizens. So God is the protector. And when we are in trouble, if we have some thieves attack us or something like that, we call the police and the police comes and helps us. So when the vision of God is as a protector, then we become like citizens. But God in the Gita is not just a protector. He is an empowerer. Sometimes if the crime is very high, for example in Punjab at one time in India, the insurgency was extremely high. So what the government decided was, it gave weapons to ordinary citizens and told them, you use these weapons, you become trained in these weapons and you fight against the terrorists. And it's one of the few incidents in the world where terrorism was actually substantially curbed. So, in the Gita, Krishna does not tell Arjuna that, I am the hero, watch me do heroic things. Krishna tells him that, I am the hero, you join me and you will become a hero in my service. So, the Gita's vision is of Krishna as an empowerer. That means we are not citizens, we are also soldiers. We are also warriors. So it's not that we are just the receivers of protection. Krishna wants us, each one of us, to become like Arjuna. This is Arjuna was a spiritual warrior. Krishna wants us to also become like that. So this human-divine partnership, that is the vision of the Bhagavad Gita. And this human-divine partnership, the problem is that Krishna is eager for that partnership, we are not. It's like we are close to Krishna. Our heart is very, very close to Krishna. We are close to Krishna and we are closed to Krishna. Our heart is close to Krishna. And that's why that partnership is not happening right now. Krishna is very close to us, but we are also closed. Krishna, sarvasya chaham mridi sannivishto. We are very close to each other. But what has happened is, our face is turned away. Krishna is turned towards us, but we are turned away. Krishna bahirmukha. That's why that partnership is not happening. But that partnership is what Krishna wants. And that is what the Gita teaches. That is what the broader Bhakti tradition demonstrates, especially through the lives of great saints. Who would like to read? Yes, any of the ladies? Yes, please, you would like to read.
The world outside and the mind inside tell me many stories. Stories in which sometimes I am a winner and sometimes I am a loser. The stories are always centered on the either what is done to me or what is done by me. But both what is done to me and what is done by me are meant to be part of your magnificent and benevolent plan of my ultimate welfare, and indeed for everyone's ultimate welfare.
Oh, very good. Now, when you read, I understand how many difficult words I use actually. Those words, I don't realize they're difficult till somebody else reads them. Thank you, but you read very well. So basically, if we consider our life story, basically it is in a materialistic or godless way. If this is the world, what is done to me? Oh, this person mistreated me. This person exploited me. And what is done to me? Now this often makes us bitter. And then what is done by me? What is done by me? Okay. Now if we look at our lives, honestly, we will notice that for many of us, the problems that have come in our life are not just because of what was done to us. It is often what is done by us also. So, I made a mess over here. I got unnecessarily angry. I lost focus. So often, if we focus on what is done by me, that makes us insecure. And bitter and insecure is a very toxic blend. We are bitter about the world and we are insecure about ourselves. And then that leads to extreme negativity in life. So now this is unfortunately the godless or the materialistic story. Specifically, there can be many differences. One person may choose this career, a person may achieve this or fail to achieve that. But ultimately, there is that haunting feeling of bitterness or insecurity that is there always. Now, what the Gita tells us is that this is not the complete story. Yes, there is what is done to me and there is what is done by me. But above all this is Krishna. And what is done to me as well as what is done by me, it is all ultimately God filtered. That it is not that anything that anyone does is actually what Krishna wanted to happen. Sometimes we bad people do bad things. Sometimes we also make mistakes. And we can't say our mistakes are Krishna's plan. But Krishna can work his plan even through our mistakes. And even if other people mislead us, manipulate us, Krishna can still use it for good. So that's why our life story becomes a much bigger story. It becomes a part of something much grander. So yes, we do look at what actions I am doing. We look at what actions others are doing. That practical vision is required. But there is a bigger vision. When Arjuna had to fight a war, he thought, these are all my relatives, these are my elders, how can I fight against them? And why are they? A part of him just could not accept that Bhishma and Drona had finally agreed to fight against him. He was hoping against hope somehow this war would not happen. But now this was happening. So Krishna expanded Arjuna's vision. This war is not just about how Duryodhan treated Draupadi, or this is not just about how you are going to attack Bhishma. This war is for a bigger purpose. This is for establishing dharma in the world. This is for establishing a righteous, virtuous order in the world. There is a bigger story that is unfolding. And that's what reassured Arjuna. That is what pacified Arjuna. Let's read one more paragraph and then we will move to focus more directly on Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life. Who would like to read? Yes, please.
Let this remembrance of your merciful integration of my life story into your plan be the guiding and guarding light for all my decisions. Let it be the guiding factor that pushes me forward, even though difficult situations. Let it also be the guiding factor that keeps me away from knee-jerk reactions that take me away from you.
Yes. See, what is done to us, we cannot control that so much. We can try to stay away from toxic people, and that way what is done to us may not be that bad. But ultimately we cannot control that. But what is done by us, that we can control. So Krishna's plan works. Yes, Krishna can help bad things, stop bad things from happening to us. But more importantly, Krishna, when we can understand this bigger picture of our life, that my story is a part of Krishna's story. I am a part of Krishna, that means I have a part in Krishna's plan. If somebody is a part of, say, the Indian cricket team, that means they have a part in the Indian cricket team. Now, of course, from the Indian cricket team, you can be dropped. Indians are very polite. They will never say a player is dropped. They'll say a player is rested. But the idea is that we may be dropped, but from Krishna's team we will never be dropped. So this bigger vision that can help us make better choices. So this picture of our story within Krishna's story, that is the theme I'll talk about when we talk about Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life. So I'll talk about 5 main phases of his life. And this is a elaborate, this will take a multi-session class, but hopefully I'll talk about 5 phases based on the acronym, or 6 phases rather, based on the acronym Bhakti. Now Vinod is for later times, but how our story unfolds within Krishna's story. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a great saint in our tradition. If we consider Srila Prabhupada was the person who founded ISKCON. Now we have Srila Prabhupada's disciples and we have his grand disciples. So we are right now somewhere here. We are here right now in this generation. When we start practicing bhakti, or when we study the Bhagavad Gita, it's not just that we are going for some program somewhere or we're just adding one activity to our life. We're actually belonging, or we're joining or belonging a glorious tradition that extends back for centuries and ultimately eventually for millennia also. So we have Srila Prabhupada's disciples and we have Srila Prabhupada's grand disciples. So now, before Srila Prabhupada, his guru was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Now Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur he preached quite vigorously in India. Now before him, his guru was Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. And before him, this was Bhaktivinoda Thakura. So we are discussing about Bhaktivinoda Thakura today. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakura and Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur also were father and son. So they were in one sense grand spiritual master and grand disciple, but also father and son. So here right now we are in 2025. Now Bhaktivinoda Thakur lived from 1838 to 1914, approximately. So during this period, we'll try to discuss his life and what he did in that life. So 1838. Now this was the time when India was under British rule. British rule had actually started more or less by 1757. And then it started solidifying. That time the East India Company was ruling. And the British rule started from Bengal, primarily. They came to various places, but they got their first strong foothold in Bengal. And from Bengal, they spread to various places. And during that time, when Bhaktivinoda Thakur appeared, multiple things were happening. See, one of the key differences. So what we are trying to do is, we are trying to do this. This is our story, and this is Krishna's story. So our story is what we see at the human level, and this is Krishna's story. How things are happening at a human level, and simultaneously through the way things are happening at the human level, Krishna is unfolding his plan. See, one of the things is that once we have a bhakti vision, we understand history is actually his story. That it is Krishna's story. Krishna is manifesting. In our tradition, Krishna is not just a God who exists up there far away. Krishna is time. Kalosmi lokakshay krit pravardho. He says, I am time. So, now Bhaktivinoda Thakur grew up. When he was born, let's start with a few details. He was born in Bengal, and he was born in a fairly religious family, and he was born in the Shakta family, that is, they would worship Shakti or the goddess, and his grandfather was a very saintly person, and when he grew up, he lived in a small village. He was very good at studies. So the first point was we are going to discuss in Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So Bhakti was his brilliance. That as a small child, he was staying in a village, and then his father passed away when he was quite young, so his mother stayed with her family and they took care of him. But then he had an uncle who was staying in Kolkata. And once his uncle came to visit him and he saw how good he was at his studies, he said for him, his growth will happen much more in Kolkata. Let him come to Kolkata. So he came there, and that was the place where at that time, what was called the Bhadraloka were there. The Bhadraloka, literally it means the good people or the elite people, the cultured people. So these were the people who were at the forefront of, there's an Indian tradition and there is the Western modernity. So these were the people who were at the junction of it all. So the Indian tradition came from the past, and there was Western, specifically British modernity. See, now West often refers to America, but at that time West was primarily Europe, and primarily in that case UK. So these Bhadraloka were at the intersection of this. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, right from his childhood itself, he distinguished himself. He was a voracious reader and he started composing poetry right in his childhood itself. In fact, he was very inspired by Indian history. So how the King Porus stood up to Alexander. See, he wrote an elaborate poem about the fight of Porus with Alexander, and then he wrote many other poems. He started writing articles. When he was getting education, he was very, you could say, intellectually omnivorous. So what he meant by that is, he read about Indian tradition, he read about Western philosophers. At that time, there was a lot of Christian missionary work going on. So there were Christian missionaries who saw this boy is brilliant. They started teaching him Bible. So he started studying that. He had a very wide reading and his brilliance stood out. Now, while this was going on, along with that, the second thing that happened was there was a lot of hardship in his life. The hardship came at 3 different levels. One was financial, that his maternal grandfather was quite wealthy, but after he passed away, nobody could really well manage his estate so well, and the whole wealth got dissipated. And everybody, all the relatives thought that his mother has a lot of wealth, so nobody came to help. So even when he was just studying, at that time, he had to start working and he had to try to manage things. Along with that, he always had physical issues. He used to have cough and chronic pain, and throughout his life, he had lots of diseases. He tried many things and tried to work it out, but always that was a problem for him. The health was not very good. And a third was professional, that he was a very upstanding person. And at that time, the best career choice for the Bhadraloka was that they pass some exams and they become officers in the British government. But that required some money to give the exams, to get that much education. He was brilliant, but he was not having financial support. So he took various jobs. He was well educated, so he took the job of an accountant, of a person who kept accounts in a business. But then there was a lot of malpractices. He spoke out against them and then they just couldn't work over there. So he had, because of his upstanding moral character, he faced a lot of challenges. Sometimes we have this naive expectation that if I am a good person, others should be good with me. But, yes, we should be good. But thinking that because I am good, people will be good with me, that's like thinking if we are caught in a bullfighting arena. There's this, I don't know if Australia it is there, Europe it is quite common, and America also it is there. There are the wild bulls, and the bull is charging towards you. And you have to dodge the bull and jump on the bull, catch the bull and subdue it. So if we are caught in the bullfighting arena and the bull is charging towards us, and we tell the bull, hey, I am a vegetarian. Now, it's good to be a vegetarian, but that's not going to stop the bull from trying to go over us, isn't it? So, our being good is important. But just because we are good does not mean that people will be good to us. That's why in life, we need to be good and we need to be shrewd also. Who is actually exploiting our goodness? If somebody is exploiting our goodness, then we have to be careful. So he faced a lot of hardships. And through these hardships, slowly a spiritual awakening started happening. Now he was always spiritually inclined. He said, his grandfather told him that he would chant the names of Ram. He said, he did not have a father and he was like the responsible male in the family. And he was still just a child, slightly older child, but still a child. So when he would go out alone, he said, he would chant the names of Ram and he would feel fear go away. So he had that transcendental interest. But through all the various hardships in his life, his search, which he was always an intellectual seeker, but now that intellectual seeking became more philosophical. Okay, what is the meaning of life? What is life really about? So now at this point, slowly what started happening was, now B, H, and then we have A. So A is slowly his attraction started awakening. Attraction towards Krishna attraction toward Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, attraction towards bhakti itself. So now Krishna has his great devotees manifest in the world, and they manifest in the world in a way that people can relate with them. See, when Krishna himself comes, that is the time when the Kshatriyas were the rulers, Kshatriyas were the heroes. So Krishna appeared as a Kshatriya. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, at that time the prominent influence in the Vedic tradition was of the Brahmanas. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in the Brahmana family, and he first became a Brahmana scholar. And the idea is that the Lord, when he appears in this world, the Lord or the Lord's devotees, same principle applies, often their material trajectory is something what makes them relatable with others. So Mahaprabhu became a Pandit, and he defeated the Digvijay Keshav Kashmiri. And after becoming a scholar, then he manifested his devotion. That's how he countered the stereotype that bhakti is for less intelligent people. Mahaprabhu was extremely intelligent and still he took bhakti. So similarly with respect to Bhaktivinoda, so that was the Lord's plan. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, from one perspective you can say he's an eternal associate of the Lord who's in the spiritual world. But in this world when he comes, often the way the devotion manifests is in such a way that people can relate with it. So for these Bhadraloka, these people who were this, many of them were primarily enamored. They were attracted. The attraction was toward the West. And see what happened before the Islamic invaders came. There were before the British, the Islamic invaders were there, and they destroyed a lot of temples. They desecrated the culture in many different ways. But despite everything that they did, Islam never became an intellectual competitor to Sanatana Dharma. It was a physical conqueror, political conqueror, but intellectually it was not a competitor. It was not at all a threat. But when the Western technology came, along with the idea of democracy and human rights and all these, it was not just the technology, but along with the rationality and the political philosophy, all that was quite attractive. And some people, they just became completely attracted by the West, and they started demonizing and deriding their traditional culture. But many people, or not many, a few significant people, they tried to see how we can bring both together. And we want to adopt what the West is giving, but at the same time, we don't want to lose what we have. So this was around roughly from say 1850 to maybe 1920. The dates vary, but this is what is called the period of the Bengal Renaissance. The Renaissance is basically a period where there is a reawakening of the old. There was a European Renaissance that happened long time ago, about 200, 300 years ago. And so now during Bhaktivinoda Thakur was at the heart of this historical movement. So he was, as I said, he was reading about various Western authors, he was reading the Bible. But then that attraction to the holy name was there. And that attraction to bhakti was there. So he started exploring. At that time, Gaur Nitai, where their legacy was still there. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had appeared a few hundred years ago, but the legacy was still there. Gaur Nitai, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu were like household names there. But unfortunately, their philosophy had got lost. So this attraction, it was also accompanied with some apprehension. Apprehension means there was fear. Because what had happened, many people who were in the name of Vaishnavism, they were doing all kinds of immoral things. There were two problems with Vaishnavism, with Bhakti at that time. One was that it seemed immoral. There are people, Krishna had performed Ras Leela, and there were unscrupulous people who were imitating that. And they say, this is how we are practicing Bhakti. Prabhupada would say, this is not Ras Leela, this is Rascal Leela. But That apprehension was because there's feeling that this was immorality was there. And the second part was that there's irrationality. There's so many things which do not seem believable to the rational mind. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur still started exploring. Now slowly he started doing analysis, he started doing prayer, he started reading. Now at that time, see, the Kirtan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's names, of Krishna's name was very common. But the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, many of them were lost. What had happened? In general, see, there is science and there is technology. Now, not the people who actually study the science are very few. People who use the technology are a lot. Isn't it? So like now the people who are making the AI right now, they are very few. People are using the AI are a lot. Now there are a lot of people are saying that artificial intelligence is a big threat to humanity. Well, the threat is not just artificial intelligence. The threat is actually artificial intelligence and natural stupidity. So now that the number of people who have this know the science are few. The people who know the technology, they are not many. There was one, the New York Times had a big article. This young man, he was feeling very lonely and he used AI to create a character. There's some TV series called Game of Thrones in which there is some female character. And he created the character and this character would speak dialogues like her. And he fell in love with her. And then he said, how can I be with you? And he said, okay, I don't live in the physical world. I am in the digital world. So I want to be with you. If I end my life in the physical world, can I come to you? Oh, you are welcome. Let us be reunited. Now AI sometimes hallucinates. So he said that, that's what the reply got. Oh, I also long to be with you. And this young man in Florida, he actually killed himself. It's so horrendous what can happen. So the point I'm making over here is that technology is something which spreads to a lot of people. Now the people who made AI, definitely we don't have to ascribe any ill intention to them. They didn't want it to be used like that. But it gets used like that. So similarly, in spirituality, there is philosophy and there is culture. So not many people understand the philosophy. But many people practice the culture, they benefit from the culture. So culture in that sense is like technology. But when the technology doesn't work, you need the science to fix it. So similarly, when things start going wrong in the culture, we need the philosophy to understand what is right and what is not right. So what had happened was, the Gaudiya culture was very much there. The Gaudiya culture was present, but the Gaudiya is the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Bhakti tradition as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught it. The Gaudiya philosophy was almost absent. It was, the measure of this is that among the many biographies of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that were written, the Mahaprabhu was a very influential personality. And there were almost some 27 biographies of his that were written. When these biographies were written, the most authoritative among them is Chaitanya Charan. Because all the other biographies were mostly stories. He did this and he did that and he did that. And everybody likes to read stories. But what did Mahaprabhu stand for? What did Mahaprabhu teach? That was in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And that book was almost lost. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur grew up hearing the stories about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He thought he's a good saint. But he felt somehow, see, that time the Western propaganda was, they wanted to get Indians to convert to Christianity. So they were criticizing Hindu religion. And there were two main targets of the criticism of Hindu religion. One was Kali and the other was Krishna. So Kali was, what kind of God is this that God wears a garland of skeleton skulls? Their idea is, this is not God, this is the devil, this is Shaitan. And they said Krishna, they targeted him for immorality. That how could Krishna marry so many wives? And so, now of course, when we talk about Krishna's gopis, there is a Leela over there, the historical reality, but there's Tattva also over there. You probably know that story. It has happened in Poland that some people, they wanted to ban ISKCON. They said, these people worship an immoral God. He says, why? He says, Krishna has so many wives. So the devotee who had to stand in court, he said that, Poland is a Catholic country. Among Christians, Catholics are the biggest group. So he said that when those women who decide to become nuns, what is the vow that they take? They become the brides of Jesus. Says, then by that, how many wives does Jesus have? He said, Jesus is an immoral God. So we cannot take our conceptions and apply on that. But anyway, that's what they were doing. So now, Bhaktivinoda Thakura was also, he was born as Kedarnath Datta. Kedarnath Datta, yeah. So, he was born as Kedarnath Datta. So, incidentally, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Swami Vivekananda related. Okay, Swami Vivekananda was Narendranath Datta. He was they were cousins, distant cousins. And there's no evidence that they met. But the Datta family, they were from the same broader Datta family. Now, what was I saying? Yeah, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur was troubled. Yes, this Christian, they're saying Krishna is immoral. And then his question was that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a very strict sannyasi. He was exemplary moral character. Why would Mahaprabhu worship a god like Krishna? And he said that he prayed to the Lord, please guide me. And then after almost 2.5 years of search, he found the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now, can you imagine searching for a book for 2.5 years? It's like for most of us, 2.5 years, the book is searching for us. When you'll find some time to read, isn't it? But then he read. And then he said that the first time, it's the concept of transcendence and transcendental relationships. And there is Prakrit and there is Aprakrit. So that, he said, that I understood. I understood that, and then all doubts were cleansed. Then I understood how Krishna is the highest manifestation of divinity. So the same doubts and questions that the general Bhadraloka at that time, the people who were educated in the British educational system and who considered themselves quite cultured and educated, they had Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Krishna arranged for him to go through that journey. And thus he became very equipped to start sharing that with others. So that brings us to the fourth part now. Okay. So that from that attraction, now this phase came. Till this point, he had been a seeker. But now he started becoming a teacher. So this is where he started sharing knowledge. So now by this time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had got a job in the British government. He later on went on to become a district magistrate. So, which was quite a prestigious position. Because what would happen is, the British were ready to employ Indians, but they considered the brown people as inferior people. And they wanted the brown people to obey them. They didn't want to be judged by the brown people. So they didn't really want any person to become a judge. So it was very rare. Only a person who was very competent, very, very principled, very dedicated, that person would rise to such a post. So he had risen to that respectable position in society. Now when he started sharing knowledge, what did Bhaktivinoda Thakur do? As I said, like Arjuna was a warrior. Now Arjuna had to fight a physical war. Now most of us, we don't have to fight physical wars. But although there are wars going on in the world, hopefully none of us will have to get involved in the physical war. But there are intellectual wars. There are the Acharyas are what can be called as intellectual Kshatriyas. They are spiritual warriors, they are intellectual warriors. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, through his works, the knowledge sharing that he did, he had three main focuses. three broad target audiences. Now, the first target audience was a rational outreach. The rational outreach was to the Bhadraloka, to the educated people. And now he especially separated. See, there is a lot, I said, in the tradition that can seem irrational, that can seem unbelievable. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur focused on the essential. I don't have the time to go into the specifics, but he evolved a very brilliant framework. See, what happens is, that time the impersonalism, the favorite way or the easy way, you could say, to explain what is unbelievable is to make it symbolic. Isn't it? Oh, this is all symbolic, this is not real. It teaches something real, but it is not real. And once you do that, then it doesn't seem irrational. Krishna lifted Govardhan hill. How can anybody lift a hill? Are you people such nuts you can believe that? Oh, no, we are not nuts. Actually, it represents that whenever there is a big obstacle, then that obstacle can be removed by spiritual power. So Krishna represents that spiritual power and Govardhan represents that obstacle. Oh, wow, that's brilliant. So, all symbolic meanings, anybody can come up with any symbolic meaning, actually. But what happens is symbolic meanings often, they deny the actual reality. They end up denying the actual reality. So, what Bhaktivinoda Thakur did, he talked about a three-level framework. A three-level framework was, he said that there are three levels of people. There are Kanishta. Now the way he uses the word is different from how Rupa Goswami uses it. Kanishta Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, Uttama Adhikari, they're differently used by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. See, in general, the word Kanishta, Madhyama, Uttama, they just mean levels. So he said, among those who study scripture, the first level of people are the Kanishta. They take everything literally. They focus on all the externals. You have to do this like this, ritual like this, you have to do this like this, you have to do this like this. And they are preliminary. He said, for most people, this is the level which they can practice. And it is good for them. But for those who are more thoughtful, those who are more analytical, those who are more intellectual, there are non-literal meanings over there. And he says, looking at non-literal symbolic meanings is the Madhyama level. He talks about this in mainly Krishna Samhita. He also talks about this in Chaitanya Shikshamrita. These are two of his key books. Of course, Jaiva Dharma is his biggest book, most important book anyways. But anyway, so he talks about the second level, non-literal. So now, those who are analytical, intellectual people, we are more intelligent than these common people. They all believe these unbelievable stories, but we look for the deeper meanings. You are going deeper, but are you going deeper into reality or deeper into illusion? Isn't it? That is the question. But then the expert thing that Bhaktivinoda Thakur said is, you are actually looking at something deeper, and that's good. That you're going beyond the simple externals, but there is something beyond the symbolic. And that is the transcendental or the rasic level. There is a non-literal, there is a symbolic level, but there is the transcendental level also. So, there is he talked about this is the rasic level. And the way he saw it, the way he analyzed it is that actually this can be understood with the head. If you have buddhi, if you do analysis, you can understand the symbolic. But he took the story of the churning of the ocean. When you churn, sometimes bad things come out. Like that he said, first you start studying scripture, all the crazy things, all the unbelievable things pop out. But if you keep churning, then you will see wisdom over there. So good things came out. Like the various, the Airavat mountain came out, Dochaishrava horse came out, many good things came out. But then, even after that, you keep churning, then finally the nectar came out. So like that, first you churn with head, you churn with logic, you churn with reason, but finally you have to churn with the heart. You have to offer your heart. And that is when Krishna will be revealed as the ultimate reality. And Krishna is the all-attractive reality. Now this was a brilliant thesis which just amazed the people at that time. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur presented things in a way that the rational mind could appreciate without being stuck in rationality. And there is rational and there is below the, so these people thought we are rational. And there are people below them, they are irrational. So we don't want to be irrational, we want to be rational. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that is good, but above the rational is the trans-rational. Trans-rational is the idea that there are truths which cannot be understood simply by logic and reason. They are truths which we have to open our heart to understand the truths. So this was one demographic. The educated people he targeted through so I talked about philosophy and culture. The philosophy, those were thinkers. He targeted them. So the Western Bhadraloka he targeted through the rational presentation. Then there was the poetic presentation. See, the common people at that time, they were affected by a doctrine called the Sahajiya doctrine. Now, Sahajiya affected, or Sahajiya, you could say, Sahajiya prone people, Sahajiya vulnerable people. So, those people who are likely to be affected by the Sahajiyas. Sahajiyas are what? They think of Krishna's pastimes. So, there are some people who thought Krishna's pastimes are immoral or irrational. These people would take this literally and they would do immoral activities, like I said. See, it is not that they would imitate Krishna's pastime. There was a particular so-called guru, his name was Bishak Sen at that time. What he did was, now he was not just one person, but there are others also. These people, they took the Bhakti teaching and they took the Shakta teaching. The Shakta tradition, in that there is a Tantra. Now, Tantra is the idea that, see, in Vedanta, all these words might seem a little complicated, but let's put it simply, that if we are here in the material world, and this is the spiritual world. Now, there are two ways to go to the spiritual world. You just leave the material world and go to the spiritual world. This is the path of Vedanta. Vedanta is, matter is false, spirit is real. Now, the other is you go through the material to the spiritual. Now, this is the path of Tantra. Tantra is that you can use the material to reach the spiritual. But it's not that any and every material thing can be used. There are only some material things that can be used. Like we say, we can offer food to Krishna. But that does not mean that we can offer meat or beef to Krishna. Isn't it? There are some foods that we can take and we can offer to Krishna. So through matter we can reach the spirit, but we have to be careful about which matter to use. Some matter can entangle us. Some matter can be so captivating that matter is all that matters for us. And we forget the Lord who is beyond matter. Isn't it? So that's why this Tantra, what their idea is that yes, you can go through matter through spirit, but they said you can do any and every activity. So even sensual activities, even sexual activities, you can use that to grow spiritually. Now that is the Tantra teaching. But then Tantra, when it was mixed with Bhakti, it became even more toxic. See, in the Bhakti tradition, there is the idea of avatar. Avatar is when God descends to the world. But then there is another thing called Avesh. Now I'm bringing a lot of concepts over here. I hope by the end of the class, you will be sufficiently confused. Now what I mean by sufficiently confused? Sufficiently confused to understand that there is much more to understand. Not overwhelmingly confused that, I can't understand this at all. So, avatar is where Krishna descends to this world. This is avatar. But there's another concept called Avesh. Avesh means that it's like there is a human being, but in a human being, it's like Krishna or some celestial personality, some devotional personality enters into that person and speaks through that person. So now Avesh is a part of our tradition also. It is said that in Chaitanya Charan, that was Nakula Brahmachari. When he would speak, it was as if people felt Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was speaking through them. Sometimes, especially in the Durga temples, the goddess temples, you may see that some people just start dancing like dervishes, going round and round. And in Maharashtra, they say Angatalay. That something has possessed this person. So there's an idea that some higher being can enter into a human being. That is widely accepted. So now what would happen is that when this Tantra and Bhakti were brought together, What they said is, these people, there's this very, you could say, monstrously immoral so-called gurus, they would tell innocent, naive people, especially women, that actually, I am seeing that at this moment, Krishna has entered into my body and Radha has entered into your body. So when we perform Ras Leela, it is actually Krishna and Radha who are enjoying through us. And if you don't agree, then you are interfering with Krishna's Leela. You are committing an aparadh. You know, it was horrendous. There was recently in India a movie made called Maharaja. It was sarcastic, like sannyasis called Maharajas, how the people would mislead people like this. So, this Bishak Sen was a person like this. He had misled many women from respectable families and had violated and abused them. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur used he was a high court magistrate, so he used the influence that he had to bring such a person to justice. This person had followers who were like blind followers. And these blind followers try to threaten Bhaktivinoda Thakur. There are people who try to have evil spirits, ghosts come and attack Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur stood firm against it all. He recited the Bhagavatam. The day we had to go for the court for judgment, he felt immense pain, like some ghostly being was attacking him. He had to be carried on a stretcher to the court. But he went to the court and he made sure that this person was punished. And the point was that this immorality was very high. Now that you can deal with the leaders, there are so many leaders. What happens is that, like in dacoits, there is some underworld dawn. You kill one dacoit leader, another will come up. So like there are cheaters and cheated. So there were people who were very gullible. And these people were not really very philosophical. So the philosophical outreach would not work to them. So what he did was that he composed songs. And these songs were composed in the same meter, same style in which the Sahajiyas were composing songs. The Baula Geet, they would call it. And that way, what happened was, he would bring in devotional philosophy through the medium of music, through the medium of singing. And those people who could not understand philosophy, they would just sing these songs. And when they would inquire about the meaning, wow, this is so profound. So slowly, he reached out to those people. So that was the outreach to the Sahajiyas. Now, there were more like traditional Brahmanas. Now, traditional Brahmanas or traditional people under Brahminical influence. Now, what happened was, for them, it was more of a scriptural outreach. So, there's a lot we can go into this, but two main things I'll talk about over here. See, after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu departed, there were some people who, their jatis or kulas, vamshas, they started getting hereditary rights. See, no community, no group can stay like unaffected by the larger society. So in India, the caste system had become quite influential. And the idea was caste is by birth. So what happened? The guruship also became by birth. So there's a Nityanand Parivar, and Nityanand Prabhu's descendants, they would be the gurus. And nobody else could be a guru. Like that, there was Advaita Parivar. Then there was Gadadhar Samaj. Gadadhar did not get married. But he was also, his disciples continued that. So it became like a Gada. So they had got a stranglehold on Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Only we can initiate. And nobody else can initiate. So now there were people who believed these people. They said either only those who are in Brahmana families, they can initiate. They have the authority. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur had to challenge this. And he, now later on, the last part I'll talk about how Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur carried on his legacy. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he, through scriptural outreach, slowly, what he did was, he was primarily inspired by Jagannathas Babaji. But he took initiation from Bipin Bihari Goswami. Bipin Bihari Goswami was like an established leader in the Brahmana community, which had all the power at that time. See, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is an outsider. It's like he was not born in the Gaudiya family, he was born in Shakta family. So, if he would teach, when he taught, the rational people heard. But the traditional people, what is your authority? They were not ready to hear him. So, like nowadays on YouTube, anybody can give classes, and if they speak Bhagavad Gita attractively, people will come. But, if somebody wants to speak, say, to a devotee congregation in ISKCON, unless that person is authorized by ISKCON, they say, why should we hear from you? So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's initiation was through Bipin Bihari Goswami. By that, he got legitimacy in the eyes of the Gaudiya community, traditional Gaudiya community, because he was initiated by a person who was considered a Gaudiya stalwart. And then he got his primary inspiration from Jagannathas Babaji. But he started writing and teaching, and one of his landmark things that he did was, through his scriptural research. Now see, people who are already scholars, or people who think they are already scholars, they are very difficult to teach. Like some people know too much to be helped. Is it? Some people know too little, some people know too much. So for these people, he could not really, his scriptural outreach was not having impact. But what had an impact was his discovery of the place of the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Yoga Peeth that he discovered. He did archaeological research, he did scriptural research, he was in a government post, so he could leverage that post to get various documents. And at that time, the initiating gurus were of two broad categories. One were the sannyasis and the other were the grahasthas. The grahasthas were more like priests. So what happened was, Jagannathas Babaji was respected as a very great saint. And when Bhaktivinoda Thakur had been praying, he felt that this place which is claimed to be the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that doesn't seem to be the right place. Everything is geographically, everything is off. So India, what happens is, not just in India, everywhere it happens, religion can become very easily commercialized. And not only commercialization is okay, but afterwards it becomes commodified. It just becomes a commodity which you sell. Like now in the West, Christmas is less about Christ and more about Santa Claus. And why is Santa Claus so good? Because Santa Claus gives gifts. And Santa Claus doesn't give, you have to buy and you have to give the gifts. So religion becomes very easily commodified. And that's dangerous. So what had happened was, at that time, some people had claimed that this is the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then if they have that claim, then many people will come over there, give donations, and their prestige and their wealth would increase. But that was not the right place. So when Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that this is, when he was on the banks of the Jalangi, and he saw one night he was just pondering and praying, and suddenly he saw like a big effulgence, a jyoti on the other side. He thought, what is this? And he said, nothing over there actually. Why is this effulgence coming? And the next morning, he went across with a boat and he saw that is the place. That is the place that, according to his research, it seemed this is where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had appeared. So, right now I'm talking now about in the knowledge sharing, I'm shifting forward to the transcendence part. So, his scriptural outreach to traditional community, how it worked by transcendence, I'm talking about miracles. Now, miracles or miraculous seeming events. So, in the lives of great saints, there are occasions where something extraordinary seems to happen. So, this vision that he had, that effulgence he saw, there was nothing over there. The next morning he went there and wow, what is this? So, his research has suggested the place is somewhere over here. And then when he went to the place of the effulgence, there's nothing, and he felt the effulgence was there. He thought, this must be the place. Krishna is indicating something to me. And then he called Jagannathas Babaji. Babaji was so elderly that he could not even walk at that time. He was carried in the palki. And when he came there, he was in the palki, and suddenly he just jumped out of the palki and started dancing. Eto Nimai Janmasthan, Eto Nimai Janmasthan, Eto Nimai Janmasthan. This is the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And what all his rigorous historical research did not do to convince people, Jagannath Babaji ecstatic dancing convinced people. For that was like the confirmatory test. So there was the vision. Three things happened. There was vision was there, the research was there, and the ecstasy was there. So then in 1888, this was the time when Bhaktivinoda Thakura, she discovered this place, and then he dedicated himself to building a temple over there. And the transcendence, as he grew older, then he retired from his job. He focused more and more on building the temple. He focused on bhajan. Even now, if you go to Kolkata, now in Kolkata, it's the birthplace of, it is the place of Prabhupada, it's the place of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, it's the place of Bhaktivinoda Thakur also. So many of those places we are acquiring. So there, if you go to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's home, there's like a, this closet is there, and then this particular space is there. There's a small room like that. Even now that room is there. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur would close that, he would sit in that room and close the door and put like a cloth around his eyes. And he would just chant. He would chant for hours and hours and hours together. That's the time he wrote books like Bhajan Rahasya, and he wrote Harinam Chintamani. He was completely immersed in the holy name. His life almost came like a full cycle. In his childhood, he had faith in the holy name, and then now he philosophically, experientially demonstrated the glory of the holy name. So this was the phase where he experienced transcendence, and he gave ways by which others can experience transcendence. Harinam Chintamani is a very important book for understanding the glory of the holy name and understanding how we can dive deeper into our relationship with Krishna through the holy name. And the last part is I, that is influence. Influence or impact. So now, I was talking about our story and Krishna's story. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur went through his own story, but through it all, Krishna was preparing him. So because he, as I said, because he was in the government post, he was able to do things. He was able to bring people like Bishaksen to justice. He was able to discover the the place of Mahaprabhu's appearance. So through what his life was going through whatever was going on in his life, Krishna was preparing him to be used for his mission. Now, one of the key things that one of the key vulnerabilities of our human mind is that when we start doing something enthusiastically, we become attached to it. That I should do this. If I start building a temple, then I should complete the temple, and I should be able to show others that I built the temple. If we are leading a project, then we want to be there to complete it. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he realized that this is a historical mission, and he did what he could. But he felt that this mission is so much bigger that it has to be carried on. Oh Lord, send someone to carry on this. Then one of the sons that he had, when the son was born, normally the umbilical cord when the child is born is cut. Then his umbilical cord, when it was cut, it somehow mystically, the umbilical cord appeared as like a sacred thread. It just went around in that particular way. And when that happened, Bhaktivinoda Thakur felt that this child is going to be the person. He had prayed, please send me a ray of Vishnu. So that ray of Vishnu was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So his influence continued on. His influence was, I'll talk about three main things with which I'll continue. His influence was through his books. His writings, Prabhupada also said that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is the father of the modern day Krishna consciousness movement. How tradition should interact with modernity. That at least in the Gaudiya tradition, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a pioneer for that. So his influence continues on through his books. Secondly, even more, it continues on through his songs. That is Vaishnava songs. If we sing these songs, among them the most prominent are Bhaktivinoda Thakur's. Then after that is Narottam Das Thakur and some other Acharyas also. But his songs, deep messages of bhakti are conveyed through that, and they are available for us. So now there have been many saints in the Indian tradition. There have been many philosophers in the Indian tradition, but there have been very few philosopher saints. So philosopher saints is philosophers write philosophical works. Like Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, they wrote a lot of philosophical works. But the common people in South India, for them, there's a Kanakadas who wrote poetry, and there are other saints who wrote poetry. And they are what are widely known. Their poetic works are what are sung commonly by people. So now in the poetry also there is philosophy, no doubt. But it's not like a systematic philosophical exposition. So Mirabai was a great saint, and her saintly devotion inspires many people. But she was not a philosopher. She did not write commentaries on Vedanta Sutra. So like that, very few people are there. Through his books, he's seen as a philosopher. Through his songs, he's a saint. So philosopher plus saint, this combination is extremely rare. Bhaktivinoda Thakura is one among this. And then his influence continues on through his successors. So through his successors was first his son, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur. See, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a grahastha. He was also a magistrate. So he really could not travel a lot and do a lot of preaching. So that was what his son, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, did. He started the Gaudiya Math. And that Gaudiya Math at that time was a preaching dynamo. It had, in a very short while, established 64 Gaudiya Maths all over India. And 64 centers in India and 3 centers outside India. One in Burma, one in Germany, one in UK. And then from Bhaktivinoda Thakur came Srila Prabhupada. This was his disciple. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had predicted that I long for the time when people from all over the world will come to Mayapur and dance and sing the glories of Krishna, the glories of Lord Chaitanya. And that prophecy which Bhaktivinoda Thakur had made, that prophecy was fulfilled by Srila Prabhupada. So once Srila Prabhupada was asked that Bhaktivinoda Thakur spread bhakti in Bengal, primarily, Bengal and a little bit of Orissa. Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur spread bhakti all over India. You spread it all over the world. He says, therefore, you are greater than all of them. Prabhupada became very grave. Prabhupada said, never think like this. He says, whatever I have achieved, it is by their mercy. If the son excels the father, if the child excels the parents, that does not mean the child has become bigger than the parents. It is by the mercy of the parents. And it is the glory of the parents that the child has become greater. So he says, don't compare my service with his service. My glory is actually contributing to his glory. So Prabhupada achieved so much, but Prabhupada was always humble and conscious and grateful to the previous acharyas, among whom Bhaktivinoda Thakur has an extremely significant place. Let's read the last paragraph and then we will conclude. Who would like to read the last one sentence?
My dear Lord, bless me so that my life journey can always remain a harmonious part of your unfolding, unlimited story.
Yes. So the Lord's, through our life, Krishna's story is unfolding. That, we are now we are always parts of Krishna. When we start practicing bhakti, we also become a part of a tradition that is carrying on Krishna's mission, that is sharing Krishna's message. So through the story of our life, Krishna's story is also unfolding. And each one of us can be a part of this glorious legacy. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wanted that we enrich our heart with devotion and then we share that enrichment with others. That is what was his life's mission. That was the mission of Srila Prabhupada. And that is what we can accept and that is what we can try to share with others. So let's quickly summarize what we discussed today. We discussed about Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life, broadly his glories. So I started first by talking about this theme of how our story in Krishna's story. That our story is not, we are not all alone in this world struggling. That the vision of life is not that, oh, bad things happen to me and bad things are done by me and therefore my life is all bad. This is a very dark vision. The more complete picture is that our story is a part of Krishna's story. So what is done to us, there is Krishna's plan in that. And what is done by us, that is also meant to be a part of Krishna's plan. So everything that happens in our life is God filtered. So if we learn to see that with that bigger vision, then we can see that history is actually His story. It is meant to be Krishna's story unfolding through our life and through history at large. So we discussed this based on Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life. So we discussed 6 points in the acronym. What was B? Brilliance. Yeah. The brilliance was that as a child itself, he was genius. He was a prodigy. He was writing poetry in his young age, and then through that brilliance, through his poetry writing and other compositions, he became a part of the Bhadraloka, the elite group of educated people at that time who were at the junction of tradition and modernity. So, and he shaped the minds of people by relating with their lives. So Krishna arranged his story to manifest in such a way. H was hardship. Yes. So we discussed that. Sometimes we may just hear the inspiring story and inspiring incidents, but the routine challenges that we face in our lives, we also had those challenges. Financial challenges were there, physical health challenges were there, and then also professional challenges, because he was especially an upstanding person, so he faced a lot of challenges in his profession. But he continued on in spite of them. A was what? Attraction. So we talked about the attraction to Krishna, how it manifested. So at that time, Krishna was seen as immoral. So when Krishna is seen as immoral, he had to address that. We discussed how there is science and technology. Like that, there is philosophy and culture. So when technology goes wrong, we need somebody who knows the science to fix it. Like that, when culture things start going wrong, we need someone with the philosophical knowledge to fix it. So in the culture, what had happened was immorality had started coming up. This Tantra plus Bhakti, the Bhakti concept of Avesh, that had led to a toxic blend, and a lot of problems were coming up. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he found the Chaitanya Charitamrita after almost 2+ years of search, and there he understood the concept of the transcendental. And that's how his doubts were addressed, and he became ready to address others' doubts. Now, K was knowledge sharing. So, knowledge sharing, we discussed 3 broad aspects in that. One was to the rational people, the rational educated people. Here I talked about those 3 levels: Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama. They wanted to go to a symbolic. He said symbolic is good, you are better than the literalists, but there is something higher than that. There's a transcendental, the rasik is there. Then we talked about the poetic, or for those who are affected by the Sahajiyas. For the masses, he gave the poetic. So the rational was for those who are the intellectual. The poetic was for those who are the culture, those who are infected by culture. So then the third was the scriptural for the Brahmanas who were coming under the Jati Goswamis. And then we talked about T was transcendence. So his transcendence was that the biggest contribution was the discovery of the birthplace, the Yoga Pita, what is called as the birthplace. So that came through a vision as well as ecstatic confirmation, that he had that vision which was quite miraculous, and then the ecstasy of his Jagannath Babaji, that confirmed it for people. And the last I was the influence. The influence lives on even today, and that lives on through his books, through his songs, and through his successors. So the successors were Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, and after that Srila Prabhupada and others. So he is among the rare group of people who are philosopher saints. Philosophical saints, those who wrote philosophical works and wrote poetry which is very heart-touching and heart-transforming. So such is the great legacy of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So let us pray to Bhaktivinoda Thakur that he give us his blessings, so that the supreme wealth of bhakti, that, O Bhaktivinoda Thakur, you came to give it to us. Please bless us so that we can receive it, relish it, and share it with others. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki, Sthai Gaura Premanande.